Marcus Stone adjusted his black tie in the rearview mirror of his Bentley. The funeral home parking lot was already packed with expensive cars. As CEO of Stone Enterprises, he was expected to make an appearance at board member Richard Wilson's funeral. But something felt off about today. Just go in, pay your respects and leave, he muttered to himself. At 45, Marcus had mastered the art of quick social appearances. His time was too valuable to spend hours at events like these. The autumn breeze carried fallen leaves across the parking lot as he stepped out of his car. Several business associates nodded in his direction. Marcus returned their greetings with practiced politeness. The funeral home's heavy wooden doors creaked as he pushed them open. The foyer was crowded with people in black, their whispered conversations creating a soft hum. Marcus signed the guest book and made his way toward the main room where Richard's open casket was displayed. That's when he saw her. 15 years melted away in an instant. There, standing by the flower arrangements, was Nicole. His Nicole. The woman he'd married right out of college back when he was just a junior executive working his way up. The woman who'd left him after 2 years of marriage, saying she couldn't handle his endless work hours and cold ambition. Marcus felt his chest tighten. She looked different, yet exactly the same. Her black dress was simple but elegant, her dark skin glowing under the soft lighting. Her hair was shorter now, styled, in sophisticated layers around her face. But it wasn't Nicole that made his blood run cold. It was the teenager standing next to her. The boy couldn't have been more than 14. He was tall for his age, with light brown skin and facial features that Marcus saw in his own mirror every morning. The boy's stance, the way he held his shoulders, even the slight frown as he looked at his phone, it was like looking at an old photo of himself. Impossible, Marcus whispered. But the math was doing itself in his head. Nicole had left 15 years ago. The boy looked about 14. His legs felt weak. Marcus grabbed the back of a nearby chair for support. A few people turned to look at him with concern, but he barely noticed them. His eyes were fixed on the boy. As if sensing his stare, the teenager looked up. Their eyes met across the room. The boy's expression changed from boredom to curiosity. He nudged his mother and whispered something. Nicole turned. Her eyes widened. In recognition, then fear. She quickly grabbed her son's arm and started moving toward the side exit. "Nicole," Marcus called out, louder than he intended. Several mourners turned to stare, but Nicole was already hurrying away, practically dragging the boy with her. The teenager looked back over his shoulder, confusion written across his face. That familiar face that looked so much like Marcus's. Own Marcus started after them, bumping into people in his rush. By the time he reached the side door, he caught a glimpse of Nicole's car speeding out of the parking lot. He stood there, watching the car disappear, his mind racing. All these years he'd told himself he was better off without her, that their divorce had freed him to become the success he was today. He'd buried himself in work, built his empire, and convinced himself he didn't need anything else. But now, Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "Janet," he said when his assistant answered, "I need you to find someone for me. Nicole Watson, my ex-wife." He paused, his throat tight. "And I need you to find out everything you can about her." "Son?" The funeral forgotten, Marcus walked back to his car. The life he'd carefully built, the control he prized above all else, was crumbling around him. But one thought kept repeating in his mind. "I have a son. I have a son. And she never told me." His hands gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Nicole might have kept this secret for 14 years, but that was about to change. Marcus Stone didn't become a millionaire by letting things slip through his fingers. And he wasn't about to let his own flesh and blood disappear from his life. The engine roared to life, and Marcus pulled out his phone again. "Get me everything on Nicole Watson," he ordered. "Address, workplace, the boys' school, everything." His voice grew harder. "And call my lawyer. I want to know my legal options." As he drove away from the funeral home, Marcus's mind was already spinning with plans. Nicole might have had her reasons for keeping this secret, but he had a right to know his son, and Marcus Stone always got what he wanted. What he didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The simple act of attending a funeral was about to unlock a past he thought he'd buried. revealing secrets that would shake the very foundation of his carefully constructed world. Nicole's hands were still shaking as she unlocked the door to their modest apartment. Michael, her son, their son, walked in behind her, dropping his suit jacket on the couch. "Mom, who was that man at the funeral? The one who called your name?" Michael asked, his eyes full of questions. "And why did we leave so fast?" Nicole sank into the kitchen chair, her heart racing. This was the moment she'd dreaded for 14 years. Every time she saw Marcus's face in the business news, every time Michael made that familiar, determined expression, she knew this day might come. "Sit down, honey," she said softly. "There's something I need to tell you." Michael sat across from her, his teenage face serious. He looked so much like Marcus it made her chest ache. That man, that was Marcus Stone. Nicole took a deep breath. "He's your father." Michael's eyes widened. "My father? But you said my father died before I was born." "I lied," Nicole whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I lied to protect us both." The phone rang, making them both jump. Nicole checked the number and felt her blood run cold. It was her old law firm, the one she'd worked at during her marriage to Marcus. "Hello? Nicole, it's David Patterson. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but Marcus Stone just hired our firm. He's looking into his parental rights." Nicole's legs gave out and she collapsed back into the chair. "How did he? It's been less than 2 hours." "You know Marcus. He doesn't waste time when he wants something." David paused. "Nicole, he's serious about this. He's already filed for an emergency hearing." In his room, Michael was Googling Marcus Stone on his phone. His eyes grew wider with each article he read. CEO of Stone Enterprises. Net worth over $500 million. Named Businessman of the Year 3 times. "Mom," Michael called out, "why didn't you tell me my father was Marcus Stone?" Nicole ended the call and walked to Michael's room. Her son was staring at a photo of Marcus on his phone screen. "Because Marcus Stone isn't just your father, honey. He's the man who made me choose between my career and our marriage, the man who worked 20-hour days and missed every dinner, every anniversary." She sat on the bed beside Michael. "When I found out I was pregnant, he was in the middle of his biggest takeover. He'd made it clear that nothing could interfere with his plans." "So, you just left? Without telling him about me?" Michael's voice cracked. "I did what I thought was right at the time," Nicole said. "I wanted you to have a normal life, not be caught in the middle of his corporate wars and media circus." Michael stood up, anger flashing in his eyes, just like his father. "That wasn't your choice to make. I had a right to know my father." The doorbell rang, making them both freeze. Through the peephole, Nicole saw 2 men in expensive suits. "Mrs. Watson, we're from Stone Enterprises legal department. Mr. Stone would like to speak with you." Nicole turned to Michael, who was standing in the hallway. "Go to your room and lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you." "Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I want to meet him." "Michael, please, you don't understand what Marcus is capable of when he wants something." But Michael was already walking to the door. Before Nicole could stop him, he unlocked it and pulled it open. The lawyers looked startled at the sight of him, this teenage copy of their boss. One of them quickly recovered and spoke into his phone. "Mr. Stone? Yes, we're here. And, sir, you should come yourself, right away." Nicole felt her carefully constructed world starting to crumble. For 14 years, she'd protected Michael from Marcus's ruthless ambition, his obsession with power and control. She'd given up her law career, moved to a smaller city, worked as a paralegal to stay under the radar. But looking at Michael's face, seeing the hurt and confusion there, she wondered if she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. 20 minutes later, a black Bentley pulled up outside their apartment building. Nicole watched from the window as Marcus stepped out, straightening his tie. That same gesture she'd seen 1,000 times during their marriage. This was it, the moment that would change everything. Again. The knock on the door echoed through the apartment like a judge's gavel. Michael reached for the handle, but Nicole caught his arm. "Whatever happens," she said, looking into her son's eyes, "remember that everything I did for you." Then she opened the door to face the man she'd never stopped loving and never stopped fearing. Marcus stood in the doorway of the small apartment, his expensive suit out of place against the worn wallpaper. His eyes moved from Nicole to Michael, drinking in every detail of his son's face. "Hello, Nicole," he said softly. Then to Michael, "I'm Marcus Stone. I believe we have a lot to talk about." Michael stepped forward. "Why didn't you ever look for us?" "I didn't know about you," Marcus replied, his voice tight with emotion. "Your mother made sure of that." Nicole moved between them. "You can't just barge in here with your lawyers and take over. This isn't one of your hostile corporate takeovers, Marcus." "Take over?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "You kept my son from me for 14 years, and you're worried about me taking over." He turned to the lawyers. "Wait outside." Once they were alone, the tension in the small living room became unbearable. Michael broke the silence. "Did you really work 20-hour days?" he asked his father. Marcus's expression softened. "I was building something I thought would give us a better life." He looked at Nicole. "I never understood why you couldn't wait just a little longer." "Wait?" Nicole's voice cracked. "I waited 2 years, Marcus. 2 years of eating dinner alone, of going to family events alone, of trying to reach a husband who was always in meetings or on calls." She wiped away angry tears. "When I found out I was pregnant, I knew nothing would change. You'd just acquired Palmer Tech, remember? You slept in your office for a month." Michael watched his parents, seeing his own features reflected in both, their angry faces. "So you just left, without even trying to work it out?" "I tried," Nicole exploded. "I begged him to cut back his hours, to make time for us. But Marcus Stone doesn't compromise. It's all or nothing with him, always has been." Marcus stepped closer to his son. "That was 15 years ago. I'm different now. I've built my empire. Now I want to know my son." "You can't buy 14 years with money, Marcus," Nicole warned. "No, but I can make the next 14 count." He pulled out his phone. "Michael, how would you like to see what your future could look like? I'm having my helicopter pick us up in an hour. I want to show you Stone Enterprises." Michael's eyes lit up, but Nicole grabbed his arm. "He's not going anywhere with you. We don't have a custody agreement." "Actually," Marcus smiled coldly, "the emergency hearing is tomorrow morning. My lawyers filed the paperwork while I was driving here. I'm seeking joint custody." Nicole felt the room spin. "You can't do this." "I can and I will." Marcus's voice was steel. "You had him for 14 years. Did you really think you could keep him from me forever?" Michael pulled away from his mother. "I want to go. I want to see everything." "Michael, please," Nicole begged. "You don't know him like I do." "Maybe that's the problem," Michael shot back. "You never gave me the chance to know him at all." The words hit Nicole like physical blows. She watched helplessly as Marcus put his hand on Michael's shoulder. A gesture so natural, so paternal, it made her want to scream. "Pack a bag," Marcus told Michael. "The helicopter will take us to my penthouse. You can stay in one of the guest rooms tonight." "He's not staying anywhere," Nicole protested. "The hearing isn't until tomorrow." "Mom," Michael's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm going. I need to know who I am, where I come from." As Michael disappeared into his room to pack, Marcus turned to Nicole. "I'll have my driver pick you up for the hearing tomorrow at 9. Wear something appropriate. The media will be there." "The media?" Nicole felt sick. "You called the press?" "I didn't have to." Someone at the funeral already leaked the story. Millionaire discovers secret son at board member's funeral. It's trending on social media. Nicole sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Everything she'd built, the quiet life she'd created for Michael, was crumbling around her. Marcus watched her with a mixture of anger and something else, something that looked almost like the love they'd once shared. "You should have told me, Nicole," he said, softly. "He's magnificent, everything I would have wanted in a son, and you stole all those years from both of us." Before Nicole could respond, Michael returned with a backpack. He looked younger suddenly, uncertain despite his excitement. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his voice gentle with his son, but hard as he glanced at Nicole. "The helicopter's waiting, as I tell." They walked out. Michael turned back. "Mom, will you be okay?" Nicole forced a smile. "I'll see you tomorrow at the hearing, baby." When the door closed behind them, Nicole finally let herself break down. She cried for the young woman who'd fled 15 years ago, terrified of raising a child in Marcus's cold, ambitious world. She cried for her son, who looked at his father with such hope in his eyes. But mostly she cried because seeing Marcus again had awakened feelings she'd thought long buried. Tomorrow their lives would change forever. But tonight, in her empty apartment, Nicole Watson faced the possibility that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Not just keeping Michael from Marcus, but running away from the only man she'd ever truly loved. The Stone Enterprises helicopter landed on top of the city's tallest building. Michael's eyes were wide as he stepped onto the rooftop helipad, his father's hand on his shoulder. The lights of the city sparkled below them like a sea of stars. "Welcome to your heritage," Marcus said proudly. "Everything you see from up here, all those lights, all those buildings, Stone Enterprises has a stake in most of them." Inside the penthouse, Michael couldn't stop staring. The place was bigger than their entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that made him feel like a king overlooking his kingdom. "Your room is this way." Marcus led him down a marble hallway. "I had my staff prepare it as soon as I left your mother's apartment." The room was actually a suite bigger than their whole apartment. A brand new laptop sat on the desk, and the closet was already filled with designer clothes in Michael's size. "How did you?" Michael started to ask. "I had my assistant call the best stores in the city. I gave them your measurements just by looking at you. I've always had an eye for details." Marcus smiled. "That's how I built all this, by noticing things others missed." Michael ran his hand over the soft fabric of a designer jacket. "Mom always buys my clothes from discount stores." "That's going to change." Marcus's voice hardened. "No son of mine will want for anything ever again." They spent the next hour touring the penthouse, while Marcus told stories about building his empire. Michael soaked up every word, seeing himself in his father's gestures, his way of speaking. "Sir," Marcus's assistant interrupted them. "The press is gathering downstairs. They want a statement about your son." Marcus turned to Michael. "What do you say, ready to meet the world?" Michael hesitated. "Shouldn't we wait for Mom? The hearing tomorrow?" "Your mother kept you hidden for 14 years, Marcus said firmly. "Okay, it's time for you to step into the light, into your rightful place." Downstairs, cameras flashed as Marcus and Michael stepped into the lobby. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Stone, how does it feel to discover you have a son?" "Michael, did you know your father was Marcus Stone?" Marcus raised his hand and the crowd fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen, today I discovered something more valuable than any business deal I've ever made. I discovered I have a son. Michael is my flesh and blood, and he will be taking his rightful place in the Stone family and Stone Enterprises." More questions erupted, but Marcus guided Michael back to the elevator. "That's enough for tonight. Tomorrow, after the hearing, we'll hold a proper press conference." Back in the penthouse, Michael's phone was buzzing with messages. His friends had seen him on the news. His social media followers had jumped from a few hundred to several thousand in just hours. "I had my tech team upgrade your phone plan," Marcus said. "Unlimited everything. And they've added security features. You're a Stone now. You need to be protected." Michael stared at his phone. "Mum's going to be mad about the press conference. Your mother needs to understand that things are different now." Marcus poured himself a drink. "You're not going back to that tiny apartment, those discount stores, that public school. You're my son. You deserve the best." "But Mom," Michael started. "We'll be well taken care of," Marcus cut in. "I've already had my lawyers draw up a generous settlement offer. She can have a new house, a car, whatever she wants." He sat next to Michael. "But you'll live here with me. I'll teach you everything I know about business. You'll go to Riverside Prep. I've already called the headmaster. By the time you're ready for college, you'll be prepared to take your place as my heir." Michael felt overwhelmed. Just this morning, he'd been a normal kid living with his mum in a modest apartment. Now he was sitting in a penthouse with a billionaire father who wanted to give him everything. "What if?" Michael hesitated. "What if I want to spend time with both of you?" Marcus's face darkened. "Your mother lied to both of us for 14 years. She denied me the chance to watch you grow up, to teach you, to be your father." He took a deep breath. "But I'm not going to make the same mistake she did. I won't keep you from her. She can visit whenever she wants, A butler appeared with dinner served on silver plates. As they ate, Marcus told more stories about his rise to power, about the empire that would one day belong to Michael. Later that night, lying in his new king-sized bed, Michael texted his mother, "Mom, are you okay?" Nicole's reply came quickly. "I love you, baby. We'll figure this out tomorrow. Get some sleep." But sleep wouldn't come. Michael kept thinking about his mother, alone in their apartment, and his father, who seemed to want to give him the world. Two different lives, two different worlds. How could he choose? In his study, Marcus was on the phone with his lawyers, his voice cold and determined. "I don't care what it takes. I want full custody. She kept him from me for 14 years. She doesn't get to make decisions about his life anymore." Paused, listening. "Use whatever you need to. Everyone has secrets. Find hers. I want my son, and Marcus Stone always gets what he wants." The city lights twinkled outside, unaware that tomorrow, in a courtroom, a battle would begin that would shake the foundations of two very different worlds. And caught in the middle was a 14-year-old boy who just wanted to know who he really was. The courthouse steps were packed with reporters the next morning. Nicole arrived in the car Marcus had sent, wearing a borrowed suit that felt like armor. Camera flashes exploded around her as she climbed the steps. Inside, she found Michael already sitting with Marcus, both in matching designer suits. Her son looked different, older somehow, more polished. Just one night in Marcus's world had already started to change him. "Mom!" Michael waved, but Marcus's hand on his shoulder kept him seated. The judge entered, and the hearing began. Marcus's lawyers painted a picture of a wealthy, capable father denied his rights. They talked about opportunities, about Michael's future, about the best schools and connections that Marcus could provide. Then, they started on Nicole. "Your Honor," Marcus's lead lawyer stood, "Ms. Watson not only denied our client his parental rights, but she also has a history of unstable employment, moving frequently and living well below the standard Mr. Stone can provide." Nicole's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. The judge was looking at her with disapproval. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "we have evidence that Ms. Watson has been working under different names over the years, suggesting a pattern of deception." Nicole felt the blood drain from her face. She'd used her mother's maiden name for a few jobs, trying to stay under Marcus's radar. Now it looked suspicious, calculated. "I did it to protect my son," she finally spoke up, her voice shaking. "Marcus lives in the spotlight. Every business deal, every decision he makes is news. I wanted Michael to have a normal childhood." "Normal?" Marcus stood up. "Living in a tiny apartment? Wearing second-hand clothes? That's not normal for my son." "No," Nicole shot back. "Your version of normal is private jets and corporate takeovers. I wanted him to learn values, not just value." The judge called for order as Marcus and Nicole glared at each other. "Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer continued, "we request immediate primary custody be granted to Mr. Stone, with supervised visitation for Ms. Watson." "What?" Nicole gasped. "No," Michael jumped up. "You can't do that. Mom hasn't done anything wrong." "Michael," Marcus said firmly, "sit down. Let the lawyers handle this." But Michael was looking at his mother's face, seeing the fear there. "No, this isn't right. Mom raised me. She worked 2 jobs sometimes. She never missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference. Because she kept you from the life you deserved," Marcus argued. "My life, my world." "Order." The judge banged her gavel. "Young man, do you have something to say to the court?" Michael looked at both his parents. "I want to know my father. I want to learn about his world, about the company I might run someday." He took a deep breath. "But I won't let anyone hurt my mom. She's not perfect, but she loved me enough to give up everything to raise me." Marcus stood still, staring at his son. He recognized that determination. It was the same look he saw in the mirror every morning. But there was something else there too, something he'd lost long ago. Compassion. "Your Honor," Marcus suddenly said, "may I approach the bench?" After a whispered conversation, Marcus turned to Nicole. "I'm withdrawing the request for primary custody." The courtroom erupted in whispers. "Instead," Marcus continued, "I propose joint custody, equal time, and..." He paused. "I'd like to provide a house for Nicole and Michael in my building, close enough for Michael to easily spend time with both of us." Nicole felt tears in her eyes. "Marcus, you were right about some things," he said quietly. "I was obsessed with building my empire. But you were wrong about one thing. I would have loved our son just as much as you do." The judge smiled. "Well, it seems we might have a reasonable solution here. Shall we work out the details?" Later, as they left the courthouse, the reporters were still waiting. But this time Michael walked down the steps between both his parents. "Mr. Stone, is it true you're sharing custody?" Marcus looked at Nicole, then at their son. "Family isn't a hostile takeover," he said into the microphones. "Sometimes it's about learning to merge different worlds." That evening, Marcus's driver took them to see the house he'd offered Nicole, a luxury townhouse connected to his building. Michael ran from room to room, excited about having two homes so close together. "Why did you change your mind?" Nicole asked Marcus when they were alone. "Because he has your heart," Marcus said softly. "And maybe that's what was missing from my world all along." As they watched their son exploring his new life, both Nicole and Marcus realized that sometimes the biggest business deals aren't made in boardrooms, but in the quiet moments when pride gives way to love. 2 months had passed. Since the custody hearing, Michael's life had settled into a new routine, splitting his time between his mother's townhouse and his father's penthouse. But today was different. Today was his first day at Riverside Prep. Marcus's driver pulled up to the elite private school in a sleek black car. Students in expensive uniforms turned to stare. Everyone knew who Michael was now. The secret son of Marcus Stone was big news. "Ready?" Marcus asked, straightening Michael's tie. They'd spent an hour that morning practicing the perfect Windsor. "Not." "What if they only want to be friends because of you?" Michael asked. "Because of the money?" Marcus's face softened. "That's something I had to learn too. Real friends don't care about your bank account." He squeezed Michael's shoulder. "Just be yourself, the son your mother raised." Inside the school, whispers followed Michael through the halls. Girls giggled and pointed. Boys tried to catch his eye, hoping to befriend the newest member of the city's elite. By lunch, Michael was sitting alone, missing his old friends from public school. That's when a girl dropped her tray across from him. "I'm Rachel Chen," she said. "My mom cleans houses for a living, and I'm here on scholarship. Want to be outcasts together?" Michael smiled for the first time that day. Meanwhile, Nicole was settling into her new job at Marcus's company. He'd insisted on giving her a position in the legal department, saying they needed her expertise. But the other employees treated her differently. Some sucking up to the boss's ex-wife, others spreading rumors about her motives. "Ms. Watson," Marcus's assistant appeared at her door. "Mr. Stone would like to see you in his office." The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Nicole smoothed her skirt, wondering what Marcus wanted. When she entered his office, she found him staring out the window. "Our son made a friend today," he said without turning. "A scholarship student, just like you were in law school." Nicole smiled, remembering. "That's how we met. I was the scholarship girl, you were the rich kid trying to prove himself." Marcus finally turned. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd told me about the pregnancy?" "Every day," Nicole admitted. "But you were different then, colder. All you cared about was the next deal, the next acquisition." "I would have loved him," Marcus said quietly. "Just like I loved you." The air between them crackled with old feelings, unspoken words. "Mr. Stone?" His assistant's voice broke the moment. "The board is waiting." That evening, Michael was doing homework in his mother's townhouse when the doorbell rang. Rachel Chen stood there looking nervous. "Sorry to just show up, but..." She handed him a newspaper. "You should see this." The headline made Michael's stomach drop. "Stone Enterprises board questions nepotism. Ex-wife's new position raises eyebrows." "They're saying your mom only got her job because of you," Rachel said softly. "The other kids at school are talking about it." Michael ran upstairs, grabbing his phone. He called his father's private number. "Dad, have you seen the newspaper?" "I'm handling it." Marcus's voice was steel. "No one questions my decisions or your mother's qualifications, but the damage was done." The next day at school, Michael heard the whispers. Gold digger, opportunist. The words followed him through the halls. At lunch, he sat with Rachel again. "Why aren't you listening to the rumors?" he asked. "Because I've seen how your mom looks at you when she picks you up," Rachel said simply. "That's not someone after money. That's just a mom who loves her kid." After school, Michael went straight to his father's office. He found both his parents there arguing. "I'm resigning," Nicole was saying. "I won't have people thinking I'm using our son to get ahead. No one tells me how to run my company," Marcus growled. "Or my family." "Stop!" Michael shouted. Both parents turned, surprised. "Mom, you can't quit, and Dad, you can't just force people to accept us. We have to prove them wrong." Marcus and Nicole stared at their son, seeing the best of both of them in his determined face. "When did you get so wise?" Nicole asked softly. "He gets it from both of us," Marcus said. "The heart and the steel." That night, as Michael worked on his homework in the penthouse, he watched his parents talking quietly on the balcony. Their shadows moved closer, heads bent in conversation. Maybe, he thought, some things broken could be fixed. Not perfectly, not like before, but in a new way. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Survived another day as scholarship outcasts?" Michael smiled, typing back, "Only works if we stick together." In his office, Marcus Stone was making calls, reminding people who held the real power in this city. In her townhouse, Nicole was preparing her legal strategy to prove her worth to the board. And somewhere between their two worlds, their son was learning that family, like life, was about finding the balance between strength and love. The board meeting at Stone Enterprises was tense. Nicole sat straight-backed in her chair as she presented her first major legal strategy for the company. Marcus watched from the head of the table, his face unreadable. "As you can see," Nicole concluded, "this merger approach protects our interests." While avoiding any antitrust issues, the board members exchanged looks. Finally, Thomas Reynolds, the eldest board member, spoke up. "Impressive work, Ms. Watson. Perhaps we were hasty in our previous judgments." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He'd known Nicole would prove herself. She always had. After the meeting, Nicole gathered her papers, her hands shaking slightly. Marcus touched her arm. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said quietly, "to celebrate." Nicole started to refuse, but something in his eyes stopped her. "Just dinner?" "Just dinner." That evening, Michael was at Rachel's house working on a school project. Rachel's mother, Maria Chen, was watching them from the kitchen as she cleaned up after her day's housekeeping work. "Your parents are having dinner together?" Rachel asked, surprised. Michael nodded. "Dad's driver picked Mom up an hour ago." "Careful," Rachel warned. "Getting your hopes up about parents getting back together usually leads to disappointment." Speaking from experience, Rachel looked away. "My dad left when he found out Mom was pregnant. Some men can't handle responsibility." "My dad's not like that," Michael defended. "He just never knew about me." "And now he's making up for lost time by throwing money at everything?" Rachel's voice was bitter. "Sorry, that wasn't fair." Meanwhile, at the city's most exclusive restaurant, Marcus and Nicole sat in a private booth. The years seemed to melt away as they talked about old times, about Michael, about the future. "Remember our first date?" Marcus asked. "You ordered the cheapest thing on the menu." Nicole laughed. "I was so determined not to be impressed by your money." "And now? Now I know there's more to you than your bank account." Nicole paused. "You've changed, Marcus. Having a son changes you." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Finding out what I missed. Who I missed." The moment was interrupted by Marcus's phone buzzing. His face darkened as he read the message. "What is it?" "Someone's been looking into our merger plans. There's a leak in the company." Nicole pulled her hand back. "You think it's me?" "No," Marcus said quickly. "But the board will suspect you first. We need to find out who it is." Back at Rachel's house, Michael was helping her mother with the dishes when his phone buzzed. A news alert. Stone Enterprises merger plans leaked. Ex-wife under suspicion. "Mom?" he called immediately. "I'm fine, baby." Nicole's voice was strained. "Your father knows I didn't do this." But who did? In his office, Marcus was reviewing security footage. Thomas Reynolds, the board member, who'd praised Nicole's work, was seen leaving the building late at night carrying files. "Got you," Marcus muttered. The next morning, headlines screamed, "Board member arrested for corporate espionage." Nicole's name was cleared, but the incident had shaken her. "They'll always suspect me first," she told Marcus in his office, "because of our history. Because of Michael." "Then let's change the story," Marcus said. He got down on one knee, pulling out a ring. "Marry me. Again." Nicole stared at him in shock. "Marcus, I'm not the same man I was 15 years ago. You're not the same woman. But Michael is the best of both of us, and maybe we could be better together." Before Nicole could answer, Michael burst into the office, Rachel behind him. "Dad, Mom, have you seen the news? They're saying—" He stopped, seeing his father on one knee. What's happening?" Rachel grabbed his arm. "We should go." "No," Nicole said. "Stay, both of you." She looked at Marcus, still kneeling. "This affects all of us." Marcus stood, still holding the ring. "I'm asking your mother to give us another chance." Michael looked between his parents, hope and fear battling on his face. "Mom?" Nicole touched the ring Marcus still held. "The last time you proposed, it was with a business plan attached. All about mergers and acquisitions. This time it's just about us, about family." Rachel squeezed Michael's hand as they watched Nicole take a deep breath. "Yes," she whispered. "But this time, we do it right. Family first. Always." Marcus slipped, with the ring on her finger, and Michael rushed to hug them both. Rachel tried to slip away, but Michael pulled her into the family hug. "You're part of this too," he told his best friend. "You helped me understand what family really means." Looking at them all, his son, his once and future wife, even the scholarship girl who'd become like family, Marcus Stone realized that some things couldn't be bought or sold. Some things just had to be built, piece by piece, with love and time and trust. News of Marcus and Nicole's engagement spread like wildfire through the city. Business magazines called it the reunion of the year. Society pages speculated about the wedding details. But in the Stone penthouse, reality was more complicated. "A spring wedding," Marcus suggested, reviewing the plans with his event coordinator. "Too soon," Nicole said firmly. "Michael needs time to adjust. We all do." Their son was doing homework, nearby, pretending not to listen. But his grip on his pencil tightened at every mention of the wedding. That night, Rachel came over for dinner. She found Michael on the penthouse balcony, staring at the city lights. "Scared they'll mess it up again?" she asked, joining him. "Scared I'll mess it up," Michael admitted. "What if they're only doing this because of me?" Inside, Marcus and Nicole were having their own doubts. Wedding plans had turned into discussions about prenuptial agreements and asset protection. "Your lawyers want me to sign away any claim to the company," Nicole said, hurt in her voice. "It's standard procedure," Marcus defended. "The board insists." "The board, or you?" Nicole stood up. "Maybe we're fooling ourselves. Maybe too much has changed." The elevator dinged, and Maria Chen stepped out. She'd been hired to clean the penthouse, part of Marcus's effort to help Rachel's family. "Mrs. Chen," Marcus greeted her. "How are you settling into the new apartment?" The Chens had moved into a better building after Marcus doubled Maria's salary. Rachel now attended Riverside Prep on a full scholarship. "Very well, Mr. Stone, though some neighbors, they talk, say we don't belong." Marcus's face darkened. He knew those whispers, the same ones that had followed Nicole at the company, Michael at school. "Money can't buy acceptance," Nicole said softly. "We all learned that." That weekend, Marcus took Michael to the office, showing him the company he would inherit. But in the elevator, they overheard two executives talking. First the ex-wife, now the cleaning lady's daughter. Stone's gone soft since that kid showed up. Michael's fists clenched, but Marcus put a hand on his shoulder. "Let them talk," he said. "Real power isn't about what people say behind your back. It's about what you do to make things right." That night, Michael found his mother in her study, reviewing legal documents. "Mom, do you really want to marry Dad again?" Nicole set down her papers. "I love him, I always have, but love isn't always enough." "What is?" "Understanding. Compromise." Things your father and I are still learning. The next day, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. Nicole sat beside him, Michael and Rachel watching from the back. I'm making some changes, Marcus announced. First, Nicole will be named Chief Legal Officer, with full voting rights on the board. Second, we're starting a foundation to provide scholarships and support for employees' families. The board erupted in protests, but Marcus raised his hand. I built this company by seeing value where others didn't. Now I'm investing in people. If anyone has a problem with that, there's the door. No one moved. After the meeting, Michael hugged his father. That was amazing. I learned it from you, Marcus said. You and Rachel showed me that real wealth isn't just about money. That evening, the Stones and the Chens had dinner together in the penthouse. No servants, no pretense, just family. I've been thinking, Nicole said, about the wedding. Maybe we should have it here, small, intimate, just people who really matter. Marcus looked around the table, at his son, at the girl who'd become like a daughter, at the woman he'd never stopped loving. Perfect, he said. Because this time, it's not about impressing anyone. It's about building something real. Michael watched his parents, seeing not the powerful CEO and brilliant lawyer, but just a man and woman trying to get it right the second time around. Rachel nudged him. Still worried about messing things up? No, Michael smiled. I think we're all learning together. Outside, the city lights twinkled, but the real magic was happening inside the penthouse, where two families from different worlds were becoming one. Not because of money or power, but because they'd found something more valuable: understanding, acceptance, and love that didn't need a price tag. The morning of the wedding arrived with a mix of sun and clouds. The penthouse had been transformed with simple white flowers and soft lights. No elaborate decorations, no army of planners, just family and close friends. Michael adjusted his tie in front of his bedroom mirror. Rachel appeared in the doorway, wearing a pale blue bridesmaid dress. Your grandmother's here, she said. Quietly, Michael's heart stopped. He hadn't met his maternal grandmother yet. She'd refused to visit, angry about Nicole's reconciliation with Marcus. In the master bedroom, Nicole was facing her mother, Eleanor Watson, for the first time in months. You're making a mistake, Eleanor said. He'll hurt you again. Mom, he's changed? We both have. Money doesn't change people, Nicole. It just makes them more of what they already are. Marcus found Michael in the hallway listening to the argument. Want me to ask her to leave? Marcus offered. Michael shook his head. No. Family is messy sometimes. That's what you and Mom taught me. Inside the bedroom, Eleanor was still talking. I watched you struggle as a single mother. I watched you work 2 jobs to give Michael everything he needed. And now you're just going to forget all that? I'm not forgetting anything, Nicole said firmly. I'm forgiving. There's a difference. Michael stepped into the room. Eleanor turned, seeing her grandson in his suit. You look just like your father, she said, not kindly. I'm proud of that, Michael replied. And proud of Mom. She taught me that people can change, that love is about second chances. Eleanor's face softened as she really looked at her grandson. You sound like your mother. I'm proud of that too. Marcus appeared in the doorway. It's almost time. Mrs. Watson, would you like to help Nicole with her dress? It was an olive branch, offered with genuine respect. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Michael stood between his parents as they exchanged vows. Rachel and her mother sat in the front row, no longer employees but family. 15 years ago, Marcus said in his vows, I thought success meant bigger deals and bigger profits. Then I lost the only things that really mattered. But life gave me a second chance, through our son, through love, through learning what real wealth means. Nicole squeezed Michael's hand as she spoke. We're not the same people we were. We're better, stronger, because we learned that family isn't about being perfect. It's about being together, through all the messy, complicated, beautiful moments. At the reception, Eleanor watched her daughter dance with Marcus. Rachel's mother served herself food alongside board members, all pretense of status forgotten. Quite a change from the society weddings I usually photograph, said a reporter, who'd been allowed to cover the event. That's the point, Michael told him. Real life isn't about appearances, it's about truth. Later, Marcus found Nicole on the balcony, looking at the city lights. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "No, just remembering that scared young woman who ran away 15 years ago." "She was braver than I was," Marcus said. "She chose love over money. I had to learn that lesson the hard way." Michael and Rachel joined them, carrying cake. "Mom's crying again," Rachel reported. "Happy tears," Maria Chen said, following them. "Out." For both my children, Eleanor appeared with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for the teens. "To family," she said, surprising everyone. In all its forms. They raised their glasses as the sun set over the city. In the fading light, they weren't a CEO, a lawyer, a housekeeper, and their children. They were just a family, brought together by chance, choice, and love. "What happens now?" Michael asked. "Now," Marcus said, "we build something better than a business empire. We build a family that lasts." Nicole leaned against her new old husband, watching their son with his best friend, seeing her mother finally smiling, feeling the warmth of acceptance and belonging. "We already have," she said softly. "We already have." 1 year had passed since the wedding. The stone penthouse was alive with laughter as family gathered to celebrate Michael's 15th birthday. "Make a wish," Nicole said, as Michael faced his cake. 15. Candles flickering. Michael looked around before blowing out the candles. His father, no longer just the cold CEO, was filming everything on his phone. His grandmother Eleanor sat beside Maria Chen, both women sharing pictures of their grandchildren. Rachel, now officially his sister, after Marcus and Nicole had adopted her 6 months ago, was stealing frosting from the cake. The past year had brought changes no one could have predicted. Stone Enterprises had become known not just for its business success, but for its community programs. The Scholarship Foundation had grown, helping dozens of families like the Chens. "Speech," Marcus called out after the candles were blown out. Michael stood, suddenly taller than the year before, more confident. "A year ago, I was just a kid living in a small apartment, wondering about the father I'd never met. Now I have 2 homes, 2 sisters." He smiled at Rachel and her newly adopted baby sister. "And more family than I ever dreamed of." Nicole squeezed Marcus's hand, remembering their own journey. The company board had finally accepted her as chief legal officer, especially after she'd prevented a hostile takeover attempt. Marcus had learned to leave work at reasonable hours, never wanting to miss another moment of family life. "I have an announcement," Marcus said after the cake was served. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Stone Enterprises." The room fell silent. "Don't worry," he laughed. "I'm not retiring, I'm just making room for what matters most." He looked at Nicole. "We're starting a new division focused entirely on community development and education. Nicole will run it." Eleanor raised her glass. "To think I once thought you were just another ruthless businessman." "I was," Marcus admitted, "until a funeral brought me face to face with what I'd lost and what I could gain." Later that evening, Michael found Rachel in their favorite spot on the balcony. "Remember when you warned me about getting my hopes up?" he asked. "About parents, getting back together," Rachel smiled. "I was wrong. Sometimes fairy tales do come true." "Not fairy tales," Michael corrected. "Just real people learning to love better." Inside, Maria was trying to help clean up, but Nicole stopped her. "Today you're family, not staff," she insisted. "Besides, Marcus loves doing dishes now." "I heard that," Marcus called from the kitchen, making everyone laugh. As night fell over, the city, the family gathered in the living room. Michael opened his presents: books from his grandmother, art supplies from Rachel, a new laptop from his parents. But the best gift came in an envelope. "What's this?" he asked, opening it. "Ownership shares in Stone Enterprises," Marcus explained. "But not just for you, for Rachel too. Equal shares." Rachel's eyes widened. "But I'm not—" "You're my daughter now," Marcus said firmly. "On paper and in my heart." Maria began to cry, and Eleanor handed her a tissue, patting her hand. Nicole watched her expanded family, her son and his sister, her mother and Maria, her husband, who had learned to value love over power. The view from the penthouse was Still spectacular, but the real view was right here in this room full of love and second chances. "One more surprise," Marcus announced. "I bought back our old house, the one where Nicole and I first lived as newlyweds. We're turning it into a community center for families in need." Michael hugged his father, feeling the strength that now wrapped around family instead of just business deals. As the party wound down, the family migrated to the balcony. The city stretched out below them, but they were focused on each other. Eleanor and Maria compared recipes. Rachel showed Michael her college application essays. Nicole and Marcus held hands, watching their children. "Did you ever imagine this?" Nicole asked softly. "That day at the funeral?" Marcus shook his head. "I thought I was just discovering I had a son. Instead, I discovered what it means to be truly rich." Michael looked at his father. "Do you regret anything? About the past?" "Only the time I lost," Marcus said. "But that's the thing about time. You can't get it back. You can only make the most of what's ahead." The night air was cool, but no one wanted to go inside. This moment felt precious, perfect. A family built not by obligation or blood alone, but by choice and love and forgiveness. "To the future," Marcus raised his glass. "To family," Nicole added. "To love," Michael and Rachel said together. And as they stood there together under the stars, they knew that some riches couldn't be measured in dollars, some success couldn't be shown on a balance sheet, and some love stories were worth waiting 15 years to complete.